Welcome to Conspiracy Deconstructed. Today we're tackling a really big one, maybe one of the most famous mysteries out there. The legend of Rennes-le-Château.
That's right. We're looking into that story of the priest, the supposed hidden treasure, and, well, the ultimate secret of Christianity.
Exactly. Our mission for you, the listener, is to get a clear picture, separating the fact from the, let's say, very elaborate fiction surrounding this priest and his sudden, baffling wealth.
And we've got quite the stack to draw from: church investigation files, local histories, eyewitness accounts from the time, and even, crucially, the forged documents that kicked off a global phenomenon.
It's a story that just grabs you, doesn't it? A poor priest in a tiny French village stumbling upon something that could supposedly rewrite history.
The core legend is incredibly dramatic.
Right. So let's lay it out there. The hook in its most potent form. You have Father Bérenger Saunière arriving in the late 19th century in Rennes-le-Château, a remote village, really small, maybe 300 people.
If that, yeah. Very isolated, very poor. And he's the new priest for the local church, which is basically crumbling.
Okay, so the story goes, while he's doing some much-needed renovations, maybe under the altar, maybe elsewhere, he finds these ancient parchments.
Not just any parchments. These, according to the theory, held the secret, the ultimate secret. Jesus Christ didn't just die on the cross, he married Mary Magdalene.
And then they had children.
Exactly. And this bloodline, this saying real or royal blood, didn't die out. It survived, hidden in plain sight, eventually flowing through the veins of the Merovingian kings of France. The Holy Grail wasn't a cup, it was the bloodline itself.
And the proof that Saunière found this earth-shattering secret, suddenly he's incredibly wealthy.
Yeah, not just a little bit wealthy. We're talking inexplicably rich. This village priest, who apparently couldn't afford basic heating oil,
suddenly starts funding these massive, almost ridiculously lavish building projects, things that would stand out anywhere, let alone in this tiny Pyrenean village.
The scale is staggering. We're talking, in today's money, well over 10 million euros, maybe more.
So the conspiracy theory fills the gap. Where did the money come from? It must have been hush money.
That's the core claim, paid by the Vatican or maybe some shadowy secret society, desperate to keep this secret buried, to protect the very foundations of the church. They paid Saunière a fortune for his silence.
Okay, so that's the legend laid bare. Was it divine revelation, ancient treasure, or, as some might suspect, a very, very clever scheme? Let's unpack this.
Right. To really understand how this, relatively obscure French priest became the center of a global conspiracy involving Jesus' bloodline, we have to go back to the man himself, Bérenger Saunière. He arrived in Rennes-le-Château in 1885.
And he wasn't exactly uncontroversial from the get-go, was he? I seem to remember reading he got into hot water pretty quickly.
Almost immediately. He was actually suspended from his duties for a few months right there in 1885. Politics, basically. He gave some fiery anti-Republican sermons during an election. This was a time of real tension between the church and the French Republic. So it shows us right from the start, this was a guy not afraid to stir the pot or defy authority.
Okay, so he's reinstated, and he takes over this church, the Church of St. Mary Magdalene. And you said it was falling apart?
Completely dilapidated. There were official reports going back decades, like one in 1853, basically saying the church needed urgent, expensive repairs. The roof leaked, the walls were crumbling. It was in a terrible state.
And the village was poor, the congregation small, no obvious source of funds for major works.
Absolutely none. We're talking maybe 300 people, mostly subsistence farmers. There was no money there.
Yeah. Somehow Saunière starts spending.
And this is where the story really takes off, the sudden shift. Between roughly 1887 and, say, 1905.
That's the period. The village, or at least the area around the church, gets this incredible makeover, all funded by the priest.
Starting with the church itself, yes. Fully renovated. New altar, beautiful stained glass windows, loads of statues and decorations. He ordered them from a well-known religious art supplier in Toulouse, Giscard. High-quality stuff.
But it didn't stop there, did it? That's when the really extravagant stuff started.
Exactly. He then builds his personal estate. First, the Villa Bethania, this quite grand, almost Renaissance-style house right next to the church. Then, the famous Tour Magdala.
The tower overlooking the valley. His library, wasn't it?
His library and study, yes. A sort of neo-Gothic tower. Plus, Landscape gardens, a viewing platform, a belvedere, and, bizarrely, even an aviary or cage reportedly intended for monkeys.
Monkeys in Rennes-le-Château.
Monkeys. It just adds to the picture of eccentricity and, well, sheer expense. And crucially, this whole estate, the villa, the tower, the gardens, it was all registered not in his name, but in the name of his housekeeper, Marie de Narnaud.
Ah, Marie de Narnaud. His close companion, some might say, alleged mistress. Registering it in her name is interesting, perhaps trying to keep it off the church's books.
That's certainly one interpretation. It protected the assets from diocesan oversight or potentially creditors. But the main point is the cost.
Let's just underline that again, the sheer amount of money.
Okay, the documented figures we have show around 36,000 francs for the church work and another 26,000 or so for his private domain. But translating that late 19th century sum into modern terms, considering purchasing power, labor costs, it's easily over 10 million euros. Some estimates go even higher.
It's an astronomical sum for a village priest in the middle of nowhere. That sudden wealth is the mystery. It's the undeniable fact that needs explaining.
Absolutely. That's the solid ground the whole conspiracy theory is built on. But interestingly, the specific theory we know today didn't emerge immediately. Saunière died in 1917.
And Marie de Narnaud, who supposedly knew his secrets, lived until 1953. Did she ever spill the beans?
Apparently not. Or if she did, it wasn't widely known. The story really starts to bubble up after her death, which brings us to phase 1 of the myth creation.
The local treasure phase.
Exactly. And it starts, believe it or not, with a restaurant owner, Noël Corbu. He bought the Saunière estate from Marie de Narnaud before she died.
Okay.
In the mid-1950s, Corbu converts the Villa Bethania into a hotel and restaurant. And, naturally, he needs something to attract customers to this very remote spot.
A good story. A publicity gimmick.
Precisely. So, Corbu starts circulating the tale that Saunière got rich because he'd found parchments detailing the location of the treasure of Blanche of Castile.
Blanche of Castile. Why her treasure?
It tapped into a well-known local legend in the Languedoc region. Blanche of Castile was the mother of King Louis IX, St. Louis. The legend claimed she'd hidden a massive royal treasure, 28.5 million gold pieces, supposedly somewhere in the area back in the 13th century. It was leftover ransom money or something.
So Corbu basically took Saunière's unexplained wealth and bolted it onto an existing local treasure legend. Makes sense for tourism.
It gave a plausible regional explanation. Saunière found some of this ancient gold, enough to fund his building spree. That was the story in the 50s. Physical treasure.
Okay, so how did we get from local gold treasure to Jesus's bloodline? That's phase 2, right? The Merovingian pivot in the 60s.
This is where it gets much more complex and, frankly, where the deliberate hoaxing begins. The key figure here is Pierre Plantard, working with author Gérard de Sède.
De Sède wrote a book, L'Or de Rennes, The Gold of Rennes, in 1967.
Yes, and this book, heavily influenced by Plantard's ideas and, crucially, his documents, completely changed the narrative. It introduced a fictitious secret society called the Priory of Sion.
The Priory of Sion. Okay, that name will become very familiar later.
Extremely. And Plantard's angle was that this priory wasn't guarding gold. It was guarding something far more important, the bloodline of the Merovingian kings.
The early French kings, Dagobert and his lot. Why them?
Because Plantard claimed he was a direct descendant of the Merovingian king Dagobert II. He was essentially inventing a secret history to legitimize his own claim to the French throne.
Wow. Okay, so he needed Saunière's story as a vehicle for his own royal ambitions.
It seems so. And the proof presented in de Sède's book. Parchments, allegedly found by Saunière, containing coded messages related to the Merovingians and the Priory.
The same parchments Corbu talked about.
Sort of, but now reinterpreted. And here's the crucial bit. These specific parchments, the ones with the codes and genealogies used in the book, they were later admitted to be complete forgeries.
Admitted? By whom?
By Plantard's associate, Philippe de Chérizet. He confessed that he had fabricated them specifically for Plantard to be used in de Sède's book. They even planted copies in the Bibliothèque Nationale, the French National Library, to make them look like genuine historical documents.
Unbelievable. So the core documents linking Saunière to the Merovingians and the Priory were known fakes, confessed to by the forger himself.
Known fakes. Yet, the story was out there, and it was about to go global. Phase 3, the bloodline globalized.
This is where the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail comes in, 1982.
That's the one. The authors, Michael Bagent, Richard Lee, and Henry Lincoln, discovered these documents. The forged ones Plantard and de Chérizet had planted in the library. They took them at face value.
They didn't know they were fakes.
Apparently not at the time. They built their entire theory on them, connected the dots. Saunière finds parchments. These parchments mention the Priory of Sion and the Merovingians. The Merovingians must be the descendants of, well, who?
Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
That was their sensational conclusion. Saunière hadn't just found proof of a lost French dynasty. He'd found proof that Jesus had a bloodline, that the Merovingians were it, and that this was the real Holy Grail.
And the money. Saunière's millions.
That became the Vatican hush money. The theory in Holy Blood, Holy Grail is that the Priories in Sion used Saunière's discovery to blackmail the Catholic Church. Saunière's fortune was the payout to ensure his silence. It neatly explained the wealth and provided a massive anti-establishment conspiracy.
From local treasure tale to Vatican blackmail over Jesus's kids, quite an evolution.
And then, of course, came the ultimate popularizer.
Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, 2003.
Right. Brown essentially took the entire framework laid out in Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the Priory of Sion, the Bloodline, the connection to Mary Magdalene, the church cover-up, and turned it into a global fictional blockbuster. He even named a key character, Jacques Saunière, after the original priest. For millions, the fiction effectively became fact.
Okay, so we've traced how the story grew from local gossip and deliberate hoaxes. But to be fair, the reason it stuck, the reason people still believe, often goes back to the original strangeness surrounding Saunière himself, things that happened before Plantard and the big books.
Absolutely. If you're a proponent of the mystery, you look past the later embellishments and focus on the anomalies from Saunière's time. You have to give these points their due because they are genuinely puzzling on the surface.
So let's look at the key pieces of evidence proponents point to, maybe 4 main areas. Let's start with E1, the parchments and the hidden treasure itself, the original seed of the story.
Right. The core belief, going back to Corbu's initial story, but also based on village rumors from Saunière's time, is that during the church renovations, specifically when they moved the main altar stone, Saunière found something.
Parchments, gold coins, maybe relics.
That's the claim. And it wasn't just whispers. There were accounts from villagers who worked on the renovations or people who claimed they saw Saunière and Marie de Nernoux digging in the church graveyard at night.
Digging graves at night. That definitely fuels the imagination.
It does. It creates this image of a secret search, reinforcing the idea that he found a significant, tangible hoard. Whether it was Visigothic gold, Roman coins, or Blanche of Castile's treasure, the belief was he found visual wealth. The idea that he also found documents detailing the bloodline came later, but attached itself to this initial treasure discovery narrative.
Okay, second point, E2. The cryptic church decorations. This is maybe the most visible stuff, the things you can actually go and see today.
It's exactly. Proponents argue Saunière's choices for decorating the newly renovated church weren't just random aesthetic choices. They were deliberate, coded messages hinting at the secret he'd found.
And the most famous example has to be that statue at the entrance.
The devil statue, yes. As you enter the church, there's a holy water stoup, the basin for holy water. And supporting it is this quite grotesque statue of a crouching demon, often identified as Asmodeus.
Asmodeus. The demon of lust, but also, significantly, a guardian of hidden treasures in some lore, isn't he?
That's the connection proponents make. And there's an inscription right above or near it, "Par ce signe tu le vaincras."
By this sign you will conquer him. Which sounds religious, but believers see a double meaning.
They see it as part of the code. Why put a demon at the very entrance? Why that specific phrase? And it wasn't just the demon. Saunière commissioned a whole set of unusual items from that supplier, Giscard of Toulouse.
Like what else?
There's a statue group of John the Baptist baptizing Jesus, but it has the inscription, Ecce Agnes Dei, Behold the Lamb of God, which is usually John's utterance before the baptism. Small detail maybe, but proponents latch onto it.
And the bas relief.
Ah, yes, above the confessional. A very detailed carving of Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount. Again, the argument is the specific details, the composition, maybe the figures depicted, hold hidden meanings pointing towards the bloodline or the treasure. The whole church becomes a kind of treasure map or esoteric textbook.
Okay, third area, E3, the holy bloodline theory itself, moving beyond physical objects to the interpretation.
This is where the focus shifts from physical gold to the idea of the bloodline as the real treasure. It hinges on that interpretation of the Holy Grail.
Not the cup, but the blood.
Exactly. The argument relies on wordplay. The medieval term for the Grail, often written as Sangrail or Sangreal, they argue, should actually be split as Sangreal or Sangreal.
Meaning royal blood.
Meaning royal blood. So the quest for the Holy Grail wasn't for a physical chalice. It was the quest to find and protect the literal bloodline of Jesus, passed down through Mary Magdalene.
And the Merovingians are key here. Why are they the designated descendants?
They're presented as the historical vessel for this bloodline. These early Frankish kings, the long-haired kings, were eventually overthrown by the Carolingians. Proponents argue their lineage didn't die out, but went underground, protected by, well, by a secret society.
Which brings us back to the Priory of Sion eventually.
It all ties together, and proponents also point to certain esoteric clues in art and literature, like the phrase E.T. in Arcadia Ego.
Even in Arcadia, I exist, found in paintings, notably by Poussin. How does that connect?
Poussin is sometimes linked to Rennes-le-Château lore, and the phrase itself is seen as a coded message about death, hidden knowledge, or perhaps a hidden tomb or bloodline persisting even in paradise. It suggests Saunière was tapping into and communicating deep, hidden, esoteric traditions.
Right. And finally, E4, the Priory of Sion itself, the alleged mechanism behind the money and the protection.
For the theory to work, especially the hush money part, you need a powerful organization capable of pulling the strings. The Priory of Sion is presented as this ancient, influential secret society.
Founded way back in 1099, supposedly, alongside the Knights Templar.
That's the claim in the fabricated documents. And its purpose was to protect the Merovingian bloodline, the descendants of Jesus. To bolster its credibility, proponents cite the list of alleged grand masters associated with the priory.
And it's a very impressive list.
Oh, incredibly so. Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, Botticelli, Victor Hugo, major figures throughout history. The implication is, if these people were involved, the priory must be real, powerful, and capable of orchestrating a centuries-long cover-up, including paying off a French priest millions. Okay, so we've laid out the believer's case, the puzzling elements that keep the story alive. Now we need to switch gears and look at what the actual historical record, the church archives, the financial documents, and the confessions tell us. This is where speculation meets documented fact.
Let's start with the absolute core of it, the money, D1. The actual source of Saunière's millions. If it wasn't treasure or Vatican hush money, where did the equivalent of over 10 million euros actually come from?
The answer was uncovered, quite definitively, during Saunière's own lifetime, specifically during his ecclesiastical trial.
The trial run by his bishop.
Yes, between 1910 and 1911. A new bishop, Monsignor Paul-Félix Bovin de Beauséjour, arrived in the Diocese of Carcassonne and was, frankly, appalled by Saunière's lavish lifestyle and rumors of his wealth. He launched a formal investigation.
And what were the official charges brought against Saunière?
There were several, including disobedience for refusing to accept a transfer and, crucially, trafficking in masses, alongside findings of exaggerated and unjustified expenditure.
Trafficking in masses. Okay, we need to break that down. It sounds archaic, but it was essentially large-scale fraud, wasn't it?
It was a specific type of fraud known as simony, selling spiritual goods. What Saunière did was set up a massive international mail-order business. He placed advertisements in Catholic newspapers and journals, especially outside France, targeting places like the US, Canada, Spain, Italy.
Ads asking for money. For what?
For mass intentions. People would send him money, typically 1 franc per mass, requesting that he'd say a mass for a specific intention, like the soul of a deceased relative, or for a special prayer request.
Okay, priests accept stipends for masses. That's normal. What was fraudulent about what Saunière was doing?
The scale and the impossibility of fulfillment. Canon law at the time was very clear. A priest could only accept a stipend for 1 mass per day that he actually celebrated. Maybe 2 or 3 exceptions on major feast days. Saunière was accepting payment for tens of thousands of masses.
He physically couldn't say that many masses.
Not even close. He was taking money for services he never rendered. It was mail fraud on a huge scale, preying on the piety of believers abroad. The church investigation and later historical research, particularly by René Descadet in the 1970s, who examined Saunière's surviving account books.
They found the paper trail?
They found the paper trail. Letters, receipts, account ledgers detailing this massive influx of money, specifically from these solicited mass intentions. When the bishop demanded an accounting, Saunière tried to muddy the waters. He submitted books claiming income and expenses of around 193,000 francs, trying to make it look legitimate.
But the commission saw through it.
Completely. They could only verify about 36,000 francs of legitimate expenditure related to the documented donations and his actual salary. The rest, the vast majority, was income from this illicit mass trafficking. The source of the wealth wasn't a mystery to the church. It was documented fraud.
So the Vatican wasn't paying him hush money. His own bishop was trying to prosecute him for ripping off Catholics worldwide. That flips the entire narrative.
Entirely. The church wasn't covering up the secret of the bloodline. They were arguably trying to manage a massive internal scandal about clerical financial corruption without causing a public explosion.
Why didn't they just hand him over to the police then? Fraud is a crime.
It is, but imagine the scandal. A public trial revealing a priest bilked potentially thousands of faithful out of huge sums. The church opted for internal discipline. Suspension.
And what happened to Saunière in the end? Did he live happily ever after on his ill-gotten gains?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
This is perhaps the biggest nail in the coffin for the secret wealth theory. Saunière refused to fully cooperate, refused to submit proper accounts, and essentially defied his bishop. He was found guilty in absentia in 1911 and suspended from all priestly duties.
So his income stream dried up.
Completely. He became a free priest, unable to legally perform mass or receive stipends. He lived out his last few years on whatever capital remained. He died in 1917, not rich, but in relative poverty.
And the detail about his death.
It's incredibly telling. After his death, his devoted housekeeper, Marie Denerneau, the one who supposedly inherited the secret and the millions, was reportedly so broke she couldn't even afford to pay for his coffin immediately. It took months.
A man supposedly paid millions by the Vatican for the biggest secret in history dies so poor his coffin goes unpaid. That's stark.
It completely undermines the idea of a hidden fortune or ongoing payments. The money came from the mass trafficking, and when that stopped, the money stopped. Period.
Okay, that dismantles the core financial mystery. Let's move to D2, the parchments and the excavations. What about the physical evidence he supposedly found?
Well, we know the first treasure story, Blanche of Castile's gold, was admittedly a publicity stunt by Noël Corbu for his restaurant. That's documented.
Right, but what about the coded parchments? The ones linking to the Merovingians and the Priory, used in Loi de Rennes and Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
Those are the confessed forgeries by Philippe de Chérissé, created for Pierre Plantard. De Chérissé admitted fabricating them, codes and all. They were deliberately planted in the Bibliothèque Nationale in the 60s to fool researchers. The foundational documents of the bloodline theory are admitted fakes.
So no genuine ancient parchments related to this have ever surfaced?
None whatsoever. And as for finding a physical treasure hoard, gold, coins, whatever,
Archaeological digs.
multiple digs over many decades have found nothing to support it. Dr. Malacan dug in 1956. An engineer named Jacques Chollet did extensive probing in the late 50s and early 60s. There was even a major publicly funded excavation of the Tour Magdala in 2003, hoping to finally settle the question.
And result?
Nothing. No treasure chamber, no hidden vault, no Visigothic gold. The only interesting find was a single skull during Malacan's dig in the church.
A skull. Could that be related?
It was carbon dated. It dates from between 1281 and 1396 AD. So evidence of medieval burials in the church, yes. Evidence of Saunière finding some ancient treasure-related remains in the 19th century, absolutely not.
Okay, so the physical evidence, the treasure, and the parchments doesn't hold up. What about D3? Dismantling the Priory of Sion, the all-powerful secret society behind it all.
This one is almost comical in its mundane reality. The Priory of Sion, the supposedly ancient order founded in 1099 with grandmasters like Da Vinci and Newton.
Wasn't founded in 1099.
It was founded in Annemasse, France in 1956.
1956. Seriously? By whom?
By Pierre Plantard, our hoaxer, claiming Merovingian descent, and 3 of his friends, including a man named André Bonhomme.
And its grand secret purpose in 1956, protecting the bloodline of Christ.
Its registered statutes state its purpose was, wait for it, studies in mutual aid for members. It was basically a small social club focused on campaigning for, of all things, low-cost housing in the area. André Bonhomme later described it dismissively as just 4 friends getting together to have some fun.
Low-cost housing. Not quite Knights Templar and secret lineages.
Not quite. Plantard took this tiny, insignificant local association and completely fabricated its entire ancient history. The 1099 founding date, the connection to the Templars, the list of illustrious grandmasters, all pure invention, designed to give his own fabricated Merovingian claim historical weight.
But how could such a blatant fabrication gain so much traction? Didn't Plantard's hoax get exposed?
Oh, it did. Spectacularly. In 1993, Plantard got involved in the periphery of a major political and financial scandal in France, concerning the death of Roger Patrice Palat, a friend of President Mitterrand. Plantard tried to enhance his own importance by planting documents linking Palat to the Priory of Sion.
That sounds risky.
Extremely. It led to a judge ordering a search of Plantard's home. And what did they find? documents proclaiming Plantard the true King of France. Faced with potential legal charges for fabricating evidence in a serious investigation, Plantard was questioned under oath. He confessed. He admitted under oath that the Priory of Sion's ancient history, the documents, the lists of Grand Masters, everything was completely fabricated by him.
He admitted it all, under oath.
Yes. The creator of the Priory myth himself debunked it in a court of law. Yet the myth had already taken on a life of its own, especially after Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and later the Da Vinci Code.
Incredible. The source confessed, but the story was too good to die.
Precisely. Okay, so the money's explained by fraud, the parchments and treasure are non-existent or faked, the Priory is a 1950s hoax. What's left? The weird church decorations D4.
Right. The devil statue, Asmodeus. Surely that's odd.
It looks odd to modern eyes, certainly, but Saunière bought it, along with most of the other statues and furnishings, from a standard ecclesiastical supplier's catalog Giscard of Toulouse. These weren't bespoke commissions encoding secrets, they were mass-produced items available to any priest with the money.
But the devil at the entrance.
That specific motif, a demon supporting a holy water stoup, is actually a known, if somewhat uncommon, piece of Catholic iconography. It symbolizes the Church's triumph over evil. The demon is literally forced to bear the holy water, representing the power of faith to conquer sin right at the threshold of the sacred space.
So it's not a coded message, it's a rather dramatic theological statement.
Exactly. And the inscription, Parsis signi tu le ventre, by this sign you will conquer him. That's a direct reference to the Emperor Constantine's vision of the cross before his victory at the Milvian Bridge, a foundational story of Christian triumph. It fits perfectly with the theme of conquering evil. Saunière wasn't hiding secrets. He was likely showing off his newfound wealth with the most dramatic, attention-grabbing items he could order from the catalog.
Consistent with his rather ostentatious personality, it sounds like. Okay, finally, the Holy Bloodline itself. The saying real idea.
The linguistic shift from saying Grail, Holy Grail,
Yeah.
to saying real royal blood is clever, yes, but it's considered speculative wordplay by mainstream linguists and historians. There's no solid etymological basis for it. It's an interpretation imposed onto the words.
And the idea of Jesus marrying Mary Magdalene, where does that come from, if not historical fact?
It draws heavily on interpretations of certain non-canonical texts, the Gnostic Gospels, like the Gospel of Philip. These texts do refer to Mary Magdalene as Jesus' companion and say he loved her more than other disciples, sometimes kissing her.
Which sounds suggestive.
It does to modern ears. But scholars of the period and these texts generally interpret companion, koinos in Greek, as referring to a spiritual partnership or closeness, not necessarily marriage. She was clearly an important disciple, the first witness to the resurrection in the canonical Gospels. But the Gnostic texts don't provide any narrative of a marriage, children, or a dynasty. That's a modern layer added on top.
And the Merovingian link, why were they chosen as the secret descendants?
Largely because there was a somewhat mysterious early dynasty that was overthrown. It makes them a convenient vessel for a hidden lineage theory. Even the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail admitted in their own book that they found little verifiable information about the true origins of the Merovingians. The connection is built on conjecture, forced interpretations, and frankly, a lack of concrete evidence, not historical proof.
Okay, so we've systematically taken apart the pillars of the Rennes-le-Château conspiracy. The money was fraud. The parchments were forged. The priory was a hoax. The bloodline theory is speculation based on wordplay and misread texts. Case closed, right? But it's clearly not closed in the popular imagination.
Not at all. And this is maybe the most fascinating part. Why does this story, built on such shaky, demonstrably false foundations, continue to grip people so powerfully?
It goes beyond just the facts, doesn't it? There's a psychological element.
Absolutely. As the historian Raymond Derrico noted back in the 70s, Saunière started as just a schemer, but the story evolved into this genuine esoteric construction. It fulfills a deep human need, I think.
The need for secret knowledge. The feeling that there's more to the world than meets the eye.
Precisely. The mundane explanation, mass trafficking fraud by a greedy priest, is, well, mundane. It's a bit sordid. The conspiracy explanation, hidden bloodlines, Vatican cover-ups, ancient secrets, is romantic, exciting, profound. It elevates the whole affair.
And it transforms the place itself. Rennes-le-Château becomes this mystical capital, not just some poor village where a priest ran a scam.
Exactly. And believing the conspiracy gives you, the believer, a sense of possessing special, hidden knowledge. You're not just accepting the boring official story. You've seen behind the curtain.
Especially when the theory challenges powerful institutions like the Catholic Church. Believing it feels like you're uncovering a truth they're actively suppressing.
That's a huge part of the appeal. It taps into anti-establishment sentiment. It positions the believer as discerning, as someone who hasn't been fooled by the powers that be. You feel smarter, more aware than the mainstream.
The story also cleverly blends undeniable facts with total fiction, doesn't it? Which makes it harder to dismiss outright.
That's key to its resilience. You can go to Rennes-le-Château. You can see the Tour Magdala Saunière built. You can see the devil statue. You know he suddenly got rich. These are tangible facts.
And these facts get woven together with regional legends, Cathars, Templars, Visigothic treasure, Roman mines that already have a mysterious aura.
Right. It anchors the fantastical elements to real places and real history, even if the connections are spurious. It feels grounded, even when it's flying off into speculation.
And then pop culture just pours gasoline on the fire.
Massively. Once a story like this gets picked up by bestsellers like The Holy Blood and The Holy Grail, and especially the Da Vinci Code, the fictional narrative often becomes more real, more accessible, and more emotionally compelling to millions than the complicated, less exciting truth documented in archives.
So, Plantard confesses under oath in 1993, but a decade later, the story he helped create is bigger than ever thanks to Dan Brown. The fiction overtook the fact.
It completely overshadowed it. Sauniere's real crime, the mass fraud, created this vacuum of mystery about his wealth that he never fully explained before his suspension and death. Nature abhors a vacuum, and into that space rushed Noel Corbu's tourist gimmick, then Plantard's royal ambitions, then the global conspiracy writers. The hoax filled the gap left by the original fraud. #tagoutro.
So, to sum it all up, the actual documented mystery of Bérenger Sauniere's wealth was solved over a century ago by church investigators and accountants. It was organized, large-scale trafficking in mass stipends, a cynical fraud.
While the grand conspiracy, the Priory of Sion, protecting the bloodline of Jesus from a blackmailable Vatican, was built entirely on mid-20th century hoaxes, admitted forgeries, and speculative interpretations popularized by best-selling authors.
The enduring power of the Rennes-le-Château legend, then, seems to lie less in ancient secrets hidden in the French hills and more in our very human desire to believe that the world holds profound mysteries, that powerful truths are being kept from us.
Which does raise a pretty provocative thought for our time, doesn't it? If a lie, a fabrication, is compelling enough, if it taps into those deep desires for meaning or secret knowledge, and if it gets amplified powerfully through popular culture, can that lie actually become more influential, more culturally real than the verifiable documented facts?
That's definitely something to chew on. What stands out to you about this story? How did a confessed hoax manage to convince so many? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know.